let's talk about a test. Not just any test, but a final exam for an entire country, where the subject is basically survival. You see, in a world that's so connected, every single nation is constantly being graded on how well it can handle a major health crisis, and the stakes, they couldn't possibly be higher.
So, that's the big question, right? How in the world do you actually grade a country on something like this? I mean, it's not just guesswork. It's got to be a really systematic, tough evaluation against some kind of global standard.
And that standard, well, here it is. It's called the International Health Regulations, or IHR. The best way to think about it is like the official curriculum. It's a rule book that's legally binding that every country has agreed to follow. It lays out the absolute minimum that you need to have in place to stop a public health problem from just spiraling out of control.
Okay, so you've got the rule book. That's one thing. But how do you know if anyone's actually following the rules? Well, to see who's really done their homework, the world has this sort of global health exam.
This exam has a name. It's called the Joint External Evaluation, or JEE. And it is a really tough three-step process. First, the country kind of has to grade itself, a big self-study looking at all its strengths and weaknesses. Then, a team of international experts comes in for what's basically a peer review, and they check everything. And finally, they publish this super detailed final report. It's the nation's official report card.
So today, we're going to look at one country's actual report card. And it was issued at a moment in time that, looking back now, it's just chilling. The country is Malaysia. The date is October 2019.
The report card is split into three main subjects. First up, prevent. This is all about building up the defenses, right? The systems you have in place to try and stop a health threat before it can even get going.
And right off the bat, we see a huge strength. Malaysia had excellent coordination, a clear A+ for getting different parts of the government to work together. But the report also pointed out a priority. They needed to get a better handle on the use of antibiotics. That's a huge weak spot globally, because it can lead to those drug-resistant superbugs.
Now look at this. This is where it gets really interesting. You can see the actual grades. A perfect score, a 5 out of 5 for coordination and for infection control. That's an A+. But then you look at antimicrobial use and biosafety systems, and you see a 3. That basically means needs study. It just goes to show a country can be a total rock star in one area and still have some serious homework to do in another.
Okay, subject number 2 on the report card is detect. This is all about the alarm systems. How good is a country at spotting trouble really, really early before it gets a chance to spread? And Malaysia got another A+ here for its amazing data analysis. They had a fantastic system for taking in all this surveillance data and actually using it to make smart calls. But the report said, here's the next step. You've got to set up mandatory licensing and quality standards for all the labs, not just the public ones.
And yeah, the grades totally reflect this. The core lab testing and the data analysis, top marks, perfect 5s. But the overall lab quality system and how well electronic tools were being used everywhere, that's a 3, needs study. It's a perfect reminder that having really great individual parts isn't the same thing as having a perfectly integrated, high-quality system.
And that brings us to the third, and you could argue the most critical subject, respond. This is the ultimate test, right? When a crisis actually hits, can you act fast and can you act effectively? And wow, this is where Malaysia showed incredible strength. Its Emergency Operations Center was rated as top tier. But even with that amazing praise, the experts pointed out a common challenge pretty much everywhere: the need to really formalize that link between the public health folks and the security authorities, just to make sure information flows perfectly when things get crazy.
And this table just brilliantly illustrates how ready they were. I mean, look at these scores. Emergency coordination, the operations center, medical countermeasures, all perfect 5s. A+, sustainable capacity. This was a system that was truly built to manage a crisis.
So, after grading all the individual subjects, what was the final verdict? What were the teacher's comments, so to speak? Let's zoom out and look at the big picture.
Well, the official conclusion from the World Health Organization's expert team was, it was basically a rave review. It said, Malaysia has demonstrated a high level of achievement and has a well-developed health security system. That's about as good as it gets.
And to put that into perspective, this wasn't just, scraping by with a passing grade. Out of 49 different things they measured, a staggering 44 of them scored as either good or A+. Only 5, just 5, fell into that needs study category. It was an absolutely overwhelmingly positive report.
Of course, no system's perfect. Even for an A-plus student, there's always room to grow. The big recommendations were to keep investing, get even better at coordinating between the human and animal health sectors, that's the whole One Health idea, and bring the private sector into the fold more. The message was pretty clear. You guys are doing great. Now, just keep getting better. So, a strong report card. A nation that was officially graded as well prepared. And then, just weeks after that report was finalized, the real test came.
I mean, just look at this timeline. In October 2019, this exhaustive report is finished, giving Malaysia top marks on being ready for a pandemic. Then, just 2 months later, December 2019, the very first reports of a brand new coronavirus start to trickle out. The final exam had arrived, and it was a complete surprise.
And that just leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? A high score on a test is one thing, but a real, once-in-a-century global pandemic? That's something else entirely. So what, then, is the true test of readiness?